Hi, Priorts. Today, we are so thrilled to be talking with Shelly. Shelly is a 16-year Army intelligence officer, captain, company commander, briefing officer. She led covert briefings overseas, security programs for 4,000 soldiers. The list goes on and on and on. She was a graduate from Western Michigan University. She's a third-generation Detroit business owner, the founder of Others Over Self. She has 154 members, 1,500 conversations, 835 hours of engagement just in 2025. She's the founder of Mission Ambition and the creator of BIE's Woman Veteran Peer Support Program. She is in Michigan as a veteran liaison, tapped into her lead female peer support statewide, host of the Hardcore and At Ease podcast, and she is serving soldiers without the uniform till the day she probably dies. So if you're on the pirate ship, you know we love our military. We love our veterans. So we're so thrilled to be talking with Shelly today. We have all the support and belief of what she's doing in life for us soldiers. And Shelly, if you would kick us off with your story, how did you go from military to an entrepreneur? How are you in the world of creator capitalist, category design? From the beginning, tell us how you got here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bri. And Christopher and Eddie, thank you for this FaceTime. This is absolutely incredible. It's actually a dream come true. So I kind of would love to preface the story to let Eddie know, who encouraged me deeply to be a little bit vulnerable. He phrased it as be generous with my founder story. And as a former military intelligence officer, I'm very good at drafting a narrative and creating frames around stories and taking conversations in directions that I want them to go, right? You give the commander some options and you kind of try to get him to pick the best decision that you think you want him to do or her to do.
Can you go a little deep? Military intelligence officer sounds so cool.
Doesn't it?
Just bring it to life? What is that? What does it mean? Give us an example.
Does it mean
that you
you're
can
Jane
share.
Bond? Are you Jane Bond?
I think I am in a lot of ways. And if I can't own that identity, I don't know who deserves to be able to own it.
I think you're Jane Bond.
Military intel, right? The quip is like, you're stupid if you're military intel. Like, they're not very intelligent. I did definitely grow up looking at the FBI show X-Files, right? Such a heartthrob. I totally thought that I was going to be her. And investigative reporting was all in the 90s as well. And so like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and April O'Neil, like I was that. And I know I'll get into that. But as a military intelligence officer, I served over a period of 16 years, specifically for the Army Reserves. And I had some active duty time in there. But my job specifically is a tactical all-source intelligence officer. And all source means that there's different ways that you collect intelligence. There's HUMINT, which is human intelligence. There's IMINT, which is image intelligence. And the list goes on. I think there's 5 or 6 different categories. And so my job was basically to run a team of analysts who specialize in each of those facets. And then I'm the one that reads through the data, puts it together in a nice collection, and then presents the story to the decision maker.
Wow.
And what type of decision makers do you present the story to?
It's a great question. And the answer to that is it depends on who you are serving, like which unit. I have had the pleasure of always serving at very high strategic levels in my military career. So typically my decision makers were full-star generals, either or full-bird colonels, 1 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars. I've given safety briefings and actual intel briefings, 10 stories underground in South Korea in the super secret bunker. Like, doesn't get more cool than that, right? So there's some really cool secret squirrel stuff is part of the Shelly Rood story.
Okay. So good. Thank you it's all that we imagined and more. So keep going with your stories.
It is, Eddie, and it gets better.
We want to hear about the part where you jump from the plane to the train, but keep going.
How about the part where I failed grenade training?
That sounds like a bad thing to fail. You're still here. So what happened?
Yeah. I think over the last 2 weeks, really since I've invested heavily in jumping on the pirate ship, I've decided that today I am going to be definitely more forthcoming than I ever have. I've done hundreds of media interviews, but I think for you, I really would like you to tell me what you see out of the life story. So there is some, super cool stuff that we'll talk about, but there's also a lot of scary things in depth. So we'll get to that as well. And I've been trying to think of how can I even frame this? And Christopher, you did an interview with Monroe Jones, and the rock and roll legend, and he referenced that he sort of Forrest Gumped his way to success. And he was just in the right time, at the right place, with the right people, and things just happened. That is so not my story. I wish that it was. But I am actually Charlie Chaplin's character. His character was called the Little Tramp. And so I think if Shelly Rood was anything, she's the Little Tramp. And the Little Tramp is just this lovable combination of comedy and pathos, where always just finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. And then sometimes it kind of magically ends up being the right place. And so I don't have a linear path, and I don't have, 10-star awards all over the place, and it's not my path. But I've learned how to deeply love the people along the way.
So tell us what your path is.
We can go chronologically, and then it's going to kind of branch.
In whatever way you want to share.
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan. I'm over here in the Detroit southeast corner, and I live about 30 minutes from the heart of the city. And I also grew up swinging a hammer on the roofs of Detroit. My grandfather owned a construction company that he started with his brothers at 7 Mile and Van Dyke. Now, if you've ever seen the movie 8 Mile, 8 Mile was filmed primarily on 7 Mile. So
Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity.
I'm taking it right now, Christopher.
Taking it right now.
So, as just a young white girl swinging hammers on the roofs of Detroit in phenomenal shape, it was a great way to just own and love your body. And it was my father's company. And so we would work on the roof, and then I would come down for lunch, and we would listen to Dr. Laura and Rush Limbaugh in the truck, and then go back on the roof and keep an eye out so that our wallets and things didn't get stolen out of the truck. And one time they took the ladder and ran and left us on the roof. So from there, I went to Western Michigan University. I did join ROTC because I was afraid of gaining the freshman 15. And I loved camping. And it did it. It did the work.
Did you have military in your family as well, too? Did you say
Do you know what's so interesting, Eddie, is that I do both of my grandfathers, and I didn't even know it because they never talked about it.
Yeah, right. Of course.
And they're not
Both
war heroes.
grandfathers served, and you didn't. Did you know that before you entered the military?
No. Nope. And I outrank them, so that's kind of fun.
So you're telling your family, your parents, who are very related to your grandparents, I'm assuming. Yes?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Direct lineage.
Just checking. Direct lineage, right? Just double checking. And so you're applying to join the military. Which branch did you join?
I signed on to the Army Reserves.
So that's where you started. And at that point, nobody thought to tell you, hey, Shelly, both your grandpas served our country?
No. If anything, I was tried to be talked out of it by aunts and uncles. I did discover I had an uncle, actually, that served in Vietnam. He was drafted and went AWOL. There's some fun stories around that. But no, like being military in my family, we do not lift up military people. It's a different mindset. It's a different viewpoint. And some of that comes, I believe, because my dad's dad was a harsh man in a lot of ways. And I think that my father perhaps blamed some of his military background for that. And, we'll kind of get into that, I think, as well, of the way that the military affects personalities and families and, the generations as they go on. So I was at Western Michigan, joined ROTC, and then I actually was in a sorority at the same time because I didn't have any girlfriends, and I wanted to make some. So my family was very encouraging for me to go out there and join a sorority. That's where I picked up my nickname, the 5-foot Fireball, and won some awards for longest handstand, keg stands, unassisted.
Oh my goodness. So how long were we talking?
We need to know.
Because we know you can do this swinging a hammer. So there's some upper body.
I mean, way over 5 minutes. I definitely remember hitting the 5 minute mark and everybody going, yeah. And then puking my guts out. So that's a story I don't think I've ever told before.
Remind me not to get into a fight with you.
It's not that the military or the ROTC buddies were any safer when it came to like drinking and crazy social stuff. But in the sorority world, it never turned off. It never shifted into something more meaningful. And so I got to see firsthand the juxtaposition between what it meant to be, living the Greek lifestyle and what it meant to actually like put on a uniform and stand with a group. and say that we had collective values out loud to one another. And the defining factor for me to really disaffiliate from sorority and make the jump was when one of my sorority sisters had GHB slipped in her drink and she was raped. And then we had a family, group meeting about it, and they had an expert come in and talk to us about it. And then not even 6 months later, we had a mandatory one-on-one, which is like one fraternity, one sorority, and it was hosted at this guy's apartment. And because the family didn't press charges, it never went anywhere. So nobody could really take a formal stand against it.
It was
And
hosted
I'm
in the
like,
rapist's apartment?
yes, yes. And I'm like, I'm not going in. They said it's required. I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. Right. So I think a theme you'll pick up is institutional betrayal. But I was like, no, I cannot be a part of this. So I kind of jumped from that and kept pretty tight with my ROTC friends, and I joined the rifle team. I actually was the best shot, ended up becoming the captain of the Bronco rifle team. So I have that 22 small bore shooter. I've got that feather in my hat. That's a
Tell
lot of fun.
civilians what that means.
22 small bore is a rifle. It's a single shot rifle. It's not a scary like bam, 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 bam. That came later in my life. So it's kind of like if you're going to go shoot a deer, you're going to put a 22 is a very small piece of ammunition, but don't underestimate it because it is what actually took out JFK.
It's too bad they didn't let you bring the rifle to that meeting and the like stuff. So anyway.
So right, there's college, and then I did get married. Right after I graduated college, I married somebody who was in ROTC with me, and so he went full-time active duty military, infantry. Ended up eventually becoming Ranger qualified. He is still in, and that is going to come up a lot as we continue to talk because I am now divorced from him and we have a child together. But there's a lot there. So for about 10 years, I was with him and kind of moved around the military community as both a member and a military spouse. And we were crazy. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of excess socialization. There was a lot of sharing of partners. There's a general that up here in Michigan who's a former
Say that
infantry.
last sentence again. There's a lot of what?
I don't remember what I divulged.
You said sharing of partners. Does that mean what we think it means?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. That's part of the vulnerability, right, that I'm willing to talk about with you guys because there's stuff that is not said out loud and it needs to be.
See, I want to be respectful, but I'd like to know a little more.
Yeah. Yep.
We
Absolutely.
don't understand what you just said.
Yeah, there's
It
a
seems
reason
like a
why we're
problem.
divorced. Yeah. So I started to talk about this general that I met up here in the state of Michigan, and he's a former infantry, 1-star. And I'll never forget talking with him. And he looked at me and he was like, "Yeah, Shelly, the United States Army, we're just very Sparta." And I remember looking at him and thinking, like, he's talking about that like it's a good thing. Right. And on one hand, it is super cool to put on all the movies and, to look at what Sparta actually means. But if you get down to the roots and you look into, paganism and just the worship and the betrayal of each other, like that is a horrible, nasty lifestyle. And I couldn't believe that he pretty much validated in that moment my lived experience of being married to an American soldier. And so I think one big takeaway from our conversation of this is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow for most people. But my take on it is that I really do think that we have a lot more Iron Mans in our United States military than we do Captain America. And I would love to encourage more Captain Americas.
Say more about what that means.
Yeah, if you look at the character of Iron Man, right? I mean, he's so selfish and he has multiple life partners, very free in his sexuality. Doesn't think anything of it, right? It's not a bad thing. It's encouraged. Everybody loves it. Always a playgirl on his arms. Very passionate into like the work and the job that's being done, but can very much be blindsided by just this overall lack of morality. And there's a hollowness in there, right? I think Marvel's done a really good job of kind of showing the hollowness of that character.
It's such an interesting framing, Shelly, because there are a few movie franchises that are more popular and far-reaching as the Marvel one. And, when you think about it in a movie, you're like, ha ha ha, Captain America versus Iron Man. And what's funny is that Iron Man is the hero of the entire thing. Now he has a redemption arc or whatever and stuff, but I had never really thought of it as the the two kind of archetypes that probably reign very deeply within the military. Like I've never heard that before. And it does sound, I mean, if I double click and I'm trying to unpack what you're saying, is the Captain America patriotism, but a very, very core, strong set of values around, God and, family, marriage, all the kind of stuff, right? And the Playboy side of things, but justifiable because of what he offers, the protection and all that kind of, like, is that what you're describing? Is like, it's not just
100%.
and like, is it 50-50? Is it,
No, there are
which way
very,
does it?
very few Captain Americas, very few Captain Americas. And right, you have to take into consideration my branch. So Army is very hardcore and right, like you walk in the room and the Iron Man song is playing, right? Like I am from Detroit. I love the nitty-gritty. One of my favorite bands is Nine Inch Nails. Like I'm right there with it, but you just keep going down that hole. And the trouble is your buddies are next to you as you go down the hole. So we're all going down that hole together. And the first person to pull out is not the hero. The first person to pull out is the weak one. And so that, I think that truly, right, that's how we got to where we are. Because we've let go of that beautiful Captain America style where like, I've had the husband at war writing me love letters, right? And then he comes home and there's obvious proof of infidelity. So that whole romance around war being sexy and somebody being gone and they're there fighting to preserve the American freedoms and our way of life, what he's not doing is coming back home and giving me the way of life that I wanted. And that happened to me. It happened to my friends. It happened to all the couples that I knew. Like, I definitely was not isolated in my experience of what it was like to be married to an active duty infantry soldier. And then we continue to see that play out because we were together for 10 years. We do have a son together. Right. And so if you fast forward to like what that relationship looks like now today, we're divorced. He's literally deployed right now. He's a lieutenant colonel. He is high ranking. He has a drinking problem. It's been noted in the court. He, used to drink and drive with our son in the vehicle. Really, really bad negative choices. My son does not want to really have a relationship with him, but
How old's your
that's the
son, Shelly?
reality.
How
So
old's your
he's
son?
16. And he's almost past his formative years. He's
Yeah.
16, and we've been divorced since the child was 4.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm the best now that I've ever been in my life. It's the short answer.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I did remarry, right? You like how my story's all about men. I remarried. I met my
Well, you
now
decided to
husband.
become a soldier. Tends to be a lot of dudes in that role.
Wait, okay, yeah, so I have to tell you that. So I was in my uniform one time and I was on a convoy with a bunch of Humvees. Okay, so our Humvees we're in Fort Knox, Kentucky, or like on the outskirts, and we stop at the civilian gas station. It's a pilot, right? And I'm in my uniform and I'm the commander of the Humvee of the convoy. And I go in the bathroom and I'm waiting in line and there's a little old lady behind me and she looks me up and down. She goes, "Great job you have there." Right. And I'm going like the Captain America route. And I'm like, "Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. It's a great job." And she looks at me and goes, "Being around all those men." So it goes both ways. It surely does.
Well, many of us are attracted to each other. That's why there's so many of us.
So it's kind of, boy, I mean, this is so thank you, Shelly, for sharing and going there, because I don't think it's discussed much, or it's kind of, I mean, you hear when it really goes over the top with the tail hooks or whatever, but like, and, and I'm trying to, this is more than one thing is true at the same time, is that individual accountability absolutely matters. And that there is a cost to serving in the military that creates all sorts of odd incentives and unhelpful behaviors and this and that with it. So, and no one knows that full better than you, of course, with it. And that you're walking in a paradox of patriotism and patriarchy and trade off, and all like there's a lot to unpack here for sure. But what I'm, and the irony of you being an Army intelligence officer, of like, you're doing this as your job, and yet there's kind of a meta. I'm also seeing all this intelligence about the military itself, and what story do I tell about that? right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the interesting journey. And we're very, very sorry for some of the pain and suffering that you had to go through with that and some of the fears that you had with your son with it. And yet, so happy that you're on the other side of it and, that you're never better than ever. That's fantastic and stuff. So,
It is. I do want to share, like, just this year, I put together a course on intimate partner violence and domestic violence, which the rates of those are significantly higher for
yeah.
military couples. And I did it as a person with lived experience. And so that is part of the teachings that I do want to incorporate into the work that we're doing, especially for our listeners. I'm building a bot on the pirate ship, and Christopher and Eddie are working behind the scenes with me and Bri to figure out how to make the Shelly bot come to life, which is a super uncomfortable thing.
Well, the at some level, it's what's so fascinating about it is that we've been having this conversation back and forth because one of the things real time, if we kind of just open the door a little bit, Shelly is like, should the bot be Shelly? Should the bot be generic, female military vet or whatever? And that, I mean, our point of view, as always, is founder problem fit is the most powerful thing that you can have. And so, and being your ability to help is always going to be maximized when it's from you. And yet, I don't want to be cavalier about the cost of what it means to be generous with your story with that. And so there is a balance to that. But like, I think about at some level what you're doing. So, this will be the first of, I suspect, several conversations we have with you, Shelly. So we don't have to get everything explored here because there's so much.
It's like a first date where you're like, don't overshare,
Yes.
Shelly.
No, but like I think if I think about the map,
We
of
don't
what
need to
you're-
hear all about your high school boyfriend right away.
the map of what you're laying out is, again, in the vein of more than one thing can be true, is that the military has been a wonderful experience and a set of opportunities for you, and also
Absolutely.
there's some painful trade-offs that have come with it. And when I think about the dream of a pirate Shelly bot, it's at some level, a big sister that's kind of, hey, let me tell an earlier version of Shelly, you know, let's be excited but sober about what you're getting into. And how do I help you navigate, this? What strikes me is like you have a choice for you to be Iron Man or Captain America. And you have a choice between how much of, based on your choice, you have a choice after that choice of how much of the culture you refuse and push back on and what you can accept and when to do what with it. Because it strikes me that a lot of, I mean, you tell me if this is a generalization or not, but I imagine women going into the military have some eyes wide open about stories and this and that about like, okay, I predominantly male profession, there's some awareness of what's going on there, but like probably not the devil and angel on your shoulder, which will tie back to later on in the story. You go to seminary at Moody, I think, right? Is that, how do you navigate, which I think is probably, it's not unique to the military. It's got its nuances and differences, but in the workplace, these types of things exist and they're bad too as well. But like, what are the things that, as you think about, you wish you could tell yourself back then as a female military vet that you're working on now with your offers? Like when you think about, Western Michigan to ROTC did you join right when your ex-husband joined the reserves? Is that right?
So he was 2 years older than me. So
2
he
years
had
old. Okay.
already
So he joined
been on
first
active duty when I graduated.
and then you joined the reserves after
That's
that.
correct.
Okay. As a military. And then you stayed. So I just kind of walk us through, like, if kind of Charles Dickens, this, like, Ghost of Shelley present goes back to Ghost of Shelley
Run,
past.
Shelly, run. That's it in a nutshell.
But tell us more about that. What would you say?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like, yes, it's going to be hard, and you have no idea what is ahead of you. Just like Charlie Chaplin's little character, he's walking down the street one minute minding his own business, and then without him even knowing it, behind him comes this mob of a Depression era hiring like riot, right? And the police come around the corner and they think he's leading the riot. And so he gets arrested. Like, these situations are so unforeseen. And I've heard you use the term life quakes, where something just like happens in your life and it kind of shakes you up and you got to figure out what to do next. I almost look at it a different way of a series of nuclear bombs. Like I'm going down this path and I think it's like my calling and it's the right path. And then literally a bomb will go off in front of me. And a good example of that is, so I've been accused of forgery by a 1-star general because I copy pasted his signature when I thought I had permission to, but I actually didn't. Like, holy bomb, what are you kidding me? Now I have to go into an official investigation for forgery? Like, what? Nobody can prepare you for that, right? And as a military intelligence officer, I was accused of plagiarism. Why? Because my materials were so good. Like, I'm Hermione Granger. I'm the A++ student. I'm going to turn in phenomenal work. Doesn't mean I cheated. Right? I mentioned the grenade, failing grenade training. Like, who thinks you're going to fail grenade training? Nobody fails grenade training, right? But I did.
I certainly
You
would not
definitely
like to be in your class.
What
And
does
there's
that mean?
I don't know if I'm
failing
ever
it?
playing catch or
I don't even
frisbee
know what
with
that
you.
means.
It means that there's a bunker in front of you and you got to lob it over the bunker. And for some reason, I did not play baseball or anything growing up. I mean, I can throw air hoses onto roofs, but it's a different mechanic with the
Yeah.
arm. And I just
Yeah.
couldn't get the grenade
Yeah.
over the bunker. So I did go to remedial grenade training and I did graduate that. So I wasn't held
Right.
back too far from that.
But like some of the stuff around accused of plagiarism and this and that, like, is that just kind of people being sticklers, or was there a motive behind? Like, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I've been trying to understand it too. And so over the past, I would say 5 years, I've really done some hard thinking on this, right? And why me? Like, why am I in the wrong place? Like, I am literally doing the right things, producing the best product I possibly can. Why am I being quote unquote attacked? And I think one of the things that I've landed on is that number one, it has always been men. I hate to say that out loud, but it has. And number two, the type of personality is always the same. And it tends to be a male that is not very masculine. And we can flesh out what that means if you want to, but they tend to be somebody that questions themselves and is not a strong leader. So when you put somebody like that next to a woman like me, it's not going to work. And if they happen to be the person with the decision making authority or the power, the easiest thing to do is avoid conflict and get rid of me. Truly.
Okay,
So,
Truly.
so
And I
it's
think that
not
I've
going to
seen that.
work. I think I know why, but it's not going to work. And more insecure man with you is not going to work. Why?
Because they feel that I will take over, because they feel like their light is dimmed by whatever it is that I'm doing or bringing to the table. And I could care less about that.
And I know this is a tough question to answer, but how much of that is you being female versus just this person would be threatened by anybody who's a superstar in their midst?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I knew that answer. I wish it was zero, but I can't deny that the wage gap exists. And so I don't think the answer is zero.
Yeah.
Because,
I
I mean,
mean,
we certainly know people like that and men like that are that way with anybody. What, of course, Eddie and I would have no way of understanding is what it's like to be a female person in that situation. I know what it's like to be a young man in that situation, but I
But
was always a big, strong young man. Now I'm
to this
a
point,
big, strong old man.
I mean, so, if we ever get to break bread together, Shelly, you'll see Christopher is a taller man than I am, right? And that as somebody who, I think I have been in situations where both when I've had a male and female superior, where I recognize the pattern immediately when you said, when they are insecure and you present competence, bad things usually happen as a result of that. Unless, now, in my younger years, I would have said, that's their problem, not my problem for being good at what I do. Right. My little, white hair part would go back and tell me, like, you know what, eat some humble pie. You have a choice. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be left alone, hassle free, whatever else it is, right? And that's kind of the interesting thing for me, like, because like if older me now goes back to younger me, 9 out of 10 times younger me is like, I want to be right, and I'm going to fall back into the same situation again with it. But like what you were describing, I can only imagine is amplified. Like if, you said you're about 5 foot. Like if you were, it's different if you're. I can imagine, 6+ male, whatever this and that. But like help us, like, what kind of wisdom would you give to your younger self in that situation? Because I know that the wisdom that I would give to myself, I would not take. And therefore, I question the wisdom that I'm giving to the likes. I want to learn from you. Like, how would you actually navigate that? Because I would make
Yeah,
the
I
wrong
mean,
choice 9 out
I
of 10
think that's
times.
why I'm on the pirate ship. I mean, I really do, because I think that at some point I'm never going to win that conversation, right? Like, I will always, the advice is that you have to kowtow to the decision maker. They're the ones that yield the authority, whether you like it or not. You can employ manipulation tactics, you can string narratives, like you can do your best to sway. But at the end of the day, I am driven by mission first. And an ineffective leader is preventing the mission from being as good as it possibly can. And I know it. I'm not going to kowtow. And that's a really hard thing to be able to say to yourself, and to be able to figure out, like, how hard am I going to push, and is this worth losing my job over? Is it worth losing this client over? Right? So a perfect example of this, when I worked in television, I'm a former broadcast television marketing executive, and I was the head of 2 departments. I was a brand manager, which meant I managed marketing and production. And we had a new news director come in. Well, prior to me joining this TV station, the news director and the brand director were on equal footing. But then they changed how the chain of command happened. And so now the news director was up on top. So in comes this dude that nobody knows from another state. Honestly, he's kind of gumpy looking. He's overweight. He's got glasses. And at this time in my life, I was just absolutely rocking out Shelly Rood. Like, I had a 1-year-old baby. My husband at the time was deployed in a war zone. Like, I was just like, I'm out here doing my executive professional stuff. And he has the nerve, his like first or second day at the station, to stand at a staff meeting and talk about how he's overwhelmed with emotion because he hasn't seen his wife and his daughter in 2 days. And he starts crying. He starts crying. In that moment, I was like, this is not going to work. I knew it. And sure enough, right, fast forward a year, and there's been nothing but drama. One of the jokes is we were in a department head meeting, and he couldn't say the phrase cocked, locked, and ready to rock. Like, he didn't even know the phrase. I had to finish it for him. And he's kind of smiling and joking as he's getting through the phrase. And I'm like, oh Lord, what am I doing with this person? Like, he's in charge of my fate in this industry
I
right
think I
now.
might have been 8 when I learned that phrase. I didn't even know what it meant. It just sounded like something cool to say.
So this is a now, I 100% believe that it is more prevalent in a male superior, female, subordinate situation. But it's actually a very evergreen situation, and it's a complex one because, like, in Christopher, I am certain that you have been through this before, where you've had an incompetent leader, and how do you navigate it? And it's a boy, oh boy, is this like, when you talk about like knowledge and intelligence, for all that, this is a wisdom challenge. It is hard to know, and there is no playbook, and there's not a, if then situation, do that. But like, if I kind of break down your news director situation, like, you know, if I were to advise myself, Christopher, Bri, on this situation, there's a bit of like scenario choices, on the spectrum of, you can be right, or you can be get an outcome with that you want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You can keep your
And
job, or you can
keep your
move
job. Now,
on.
the correct answer on the right and outcome is to become a creator capitalist, like you've done. Is, you know what? You're going to have dumb bosses. That's a fact of life. Go quit and start your own thing, right? And that, when I look at, like, one of my favorite pods that Christopher did was with Eric Yuan, the head of Zoom and the founder, and was like, when he presented the idea of Zoom to his bosses at WebEx, they were like, not a good idea. Like, little did they know, right? So he had to go out, start on his own. Jensen Huang, Lisa Su, big time CEOs of NVIDIA and AMD, like, they were not going to work up the food chain in a normal corporate tech structure. They had to go create their own. So, like, I know the answer in the long run is to go create your own thing as a creator capitalist. In the near term, it becomes a really nuanced question of, there's no perfect answer, and you have to choose from a set of trade-offs that you're probably not going to be happy with. So when I was in those situations with an incompetent boss, the correct answer for me in consulting was, be polite, make your boss look good, and maneuver out for this project, this too shall pass. Wait to the next one and then move on, type of a thing, right? Trust in that situation. Don't get fired. Actually, I had a situation where I had to be talked down off the ledge after an incompetent person said something to me that was like, it was like Memorial Day weekend, Saturday at midnight, and I had been cranking through this one thing, and I didn't want to do a stupid thing that this person wanted to do, and this person said, "Well, Eddie, I don't think you're being very client service oriented," and I almost quit on the spot, right? Because I was so offended to the deep of my core, and this person was taking credit for everything, but I'm glad I didn't quit. I'm glad that I was talked on off the ledge and I was better for it. But boy, oh boy, was that a bitter pill to swallow at the time. And it would have felt so, because if I had quit, that person would have gotten fired immediately. And even now I look at this like, ooh, that sounds kind of tempting to have the mutually assured destruction scenario, right?
It does,
But
Eddie. And I think part of that advice is also situational awareness.
yes.
Like, do you know the backstory of the person? Do you know that they're cheating on their wife? Do you know that they're running around? Do you know that they're doing recreational drugs? Like, what about the values, right? Have situational awareness over the values of what you believe is right and what you stand for. And then the organizations also. And part of that, we can relate back to the military. There's something called moral injury. And moral injury is a term that's only been coined over the last decade here. And essentially, it's when you have a set of values and there's either a person or an organization and they're telling or asking you to do something that does not line up with what you believe is the right thing to do. And so I have a course that I teach on moral injury as well. And we're all experiencing moral injury, every single one of us at multiple points throughout our day. And what's interesting is the only way to heal from moral injury is to understand the why of what had happened. And I think if you can do that, right, I think that's the beauty of Charlie Chaplin's The Little Tramp, because he doesn't see the why, but as the viewer, you know the why. You know why he got arrested, even if he doesn't. And so with the idea of moral injury, if we can teach ourselves to at least, we don't have to agree with the why, but if we can gain some sort of understanding about why has this happened to me, then you actually have a chance to heal. And that's the only way to heal. There is no pill. There is no potion.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to keep coming in. So Shelly, the moral injury part and the empathy behind it, it's so funny that you mentioned it, because that was the advice that I was given. Because I had run-ins with this person later on, and my boss at the time was like, "Can you have some empathy for this person?"
No,
And I was
he
like,
can't even say locked, cocked, and ready to rock.
Well, no, but it's a bit of the moral, like it's a bit of the, let's understand the context as
This is no douchebag that I'm following. He can't even find his butt with both hands.
So yes, and right, because like it's interesting of like when you remove yourself from being Charlie Chaplin to the viewer, that's what you're basically encouraging. And in my situation, it was like, you know what, this person, has the basic gist of it was like, look, you have a happy marriage, you have a happy family, you have a career that's looking like this. This person's situation is not that. And, and it doesn't excuse, but can you have some empathy for where this person is coming from and know that, just be satisfied with that and all. And it was just one of those, like, I was like, and it was very much a set of like, this person was appealing to faith of like, the Bible says to forgive and this, like, and I was like, I know I should have empathy and I know I should forgive, but ask me again next time, because not right now. And so it was a very selfish thing that I did at that moment, but boy, oh boy, was it the right answer. And that's the only advice I could give is in that situation. But part of what is so cool, Shelly, is that when you do your pirate bot and all the offers that you have, frankly, even just calling attention and framing and naming and claiming it to, you are in what most would call an unwinnable situation in the near term. It is winnable in the long term, but just know it's unwinnable. Perfect. You can't perfectly win it. That at least establishes some baseline of like, okay, I'm going to reframe my expectations, right? And then your Charlie Chaplin tramp thing is like, let me show you this, right? Look at all these terrible things that happened to him, but now you can understand why, the context, right? So there's a discovery process of, let me just tell you straight, you're an unwinnable, change your perspective, understand the context of what's happening, and then you have a choice. And in my situation, I made a suboptimal near-term choice, but you begin to get agency back when you choose how you want to respond, even if it's not the right answer in the near term or the wrong one. Because like I put myself back. I'm like, would I make the right choice? I don't know, right? But at least I felt better that it was my choice and I was not reacting to somebody else's choice. Yeah, I don't. It sounds like that's what you're walking through, and if you can package that into a bot, it doesn't change the horrific nature of the situation, but boy, does it help me feel a lot better.
It does, right? And so then when you zoom out and you look at the woman veteran landscape, there's so many stereotypes out there and they're so wrong. And we have the first opportunity, I really believe, to make a defining statement of who and what a woman veteran is. That's never been done before. It's always been handed to us, right? The sexy woman on the side of the plane. I mean, right? How is that the woman veteran? my woman is flying the plane, but like, okay. And so just the perception of who we are is very wrong. And we're not helping ourselves in a lot of ways, because what tends to happen is it is fun to tell the stories about, can you believe this happened to me? Right? Like I go to Home Depot and it says veteran parking only, and I get out of my truck and some dude approaches me and is like, do you know that that's for veterans? And she's like, I am a veteran. Like we get caught in that. And it's fun to share these stories, and we get loud with these stories, and justifiably so. But those are the only stories being told. And I really want to reframe the narrative. You know what? Scratch that. I don't even like that phrase. I want to write the narrative that women veterans are amazing. We are doing amazing things. We are living out our lives in a sense of peace, of the sovereign freedom that we have fought to earn. That is what the woman veteran is. And right now, that is not how she's being showcased. And if I can help build any type of platform for that, that would be what I believe is my calling as a chaplain
Well,
and as a creator.
you know what, Shelly, as a chaplain and as a creator, the two things that you've just dropped, the grenades that you dropped into the mental grenades are, one, we talked about the other week. A male's experience with the military tends to be linear. A woman's tends to be up and down, sideways, and it's a lot more complex. That's kind of one, right? And I had never thought of it until you had mentioned it. Two is that this is a evergreen. Everybody can experience this from time to time, but women will experience it more frequently. You will be put in unwinnable situations in the near term. And this is how you respond to that life quake. And you may not get what you want, but you can reclaim your agency through how you respond. And you have and you have frame, name, and claim that entire process. So I name it, it's unwinnable and it sucks. I'm sorry about that, right? And I've been there before, which is why you're being generous with your story is so valuable. Here's how I look at it. Let me give you some language, moral injury. Let me give you some of this and that. And then here are the choices that you can consider between. I will not judge you for the choices that you make, as long as you make them with eyes wide open. And that the goal is not to win the situation, not to win the unwinnable situation, but to build the superpower of being able to recognize when you're in an unwinnable situation and know how to deal with it with grace and power. And if you do that, it will undoubtedly serve many, many female vets, but it's going to serve a lot of people, Shelly. Like that's the part of it that's going to be so very, very interesting about what you're doing.
All over it. And I heard in another interview of yours, Christopher, with the Flourish book, right? Life is not a game to win, but a garden to be tended. If I can just put that in the mind of every woman who's serving our nation or
Yes.
has in the past, that's how we win. That's how we win the suicide war, right? I mean, I love to say that who takes care of the women take care of the women. Who takes care of the men? The women take care of the men. Like, as much as I hate to stereotype, I'm also not going to fight with truth and fact. So if we take care of the women, then doesn't everybody win? Let's just start there. The men can have their
100%.
own suicide prevention awareness, whatever's. I don't know. I don't know that it's working. The data shows that it's not working.
Yeah, well,
Amen.
and listen, there's been a huge stupidity that's gone on in the last, I don't know, 20 or so years in our world that tries to convince us that men and women are the same thing. No, they're different. They experience things differently. There's certain environments under certain situations where women should be with women only and men only, and like these things all used to be obvious, right? The other thing I think about what you're saying is, and this is a stereotype, of course, But women are community builders. They're family creators. They're people who bring people together, right? In ways that men often are not. Again, stereotype. These are things to be celebrated. These are things to be rewarded. The number one reason I love my wife, Carrie, starts with, she's a woman. That's where it starts. And the most blatant thing about that is we're very different on all kinds of dimensions. She's also 5 feet and I'm 6 feet. That's where it starts. It starts there. The attraction, both physical and not, starts with, this is a different kind of person than me. And it flourishes out from there. And so this sort of trying to make women and men the same thing has always seemed completely insane to me. The other thing I really want to say to you, Shelly, is we have a lot of room for you. We have a lot of room for your pain. And what I love about you and your story, and I've learned this in my life, certain things will happen to you in your life. And as a result of those things, people will say you're a victim. By law, according to the state of California, I'm a victim. I have a victim's advocate who works for the district attorney's office in Santa Cruz, California, because my brother was murdered. I refuse the term. We, our family, have been victimized, but we are very far from victims. And this is the part of your story where things begin to elevate. You chose not to be a victim. You could have been. There were a lot of people who were teaching you that that's what you should be, and you should wrap yourself in a victim flag and do all the things that victims do. And look, I'm not trying to be cruel to people who feel like they're victims. I understand that feeling. I've had that feeling. I get it. But there is power. Viktor Frankl taught us in A Man's Search for Meaning. There is power in choosing. And so all that said, Shelly, my question to you is, when did you decide you weren't going to be a victim? Maybe you had been victimized, but you were going to get on with it and you were going to quote our friend Eminem, let's get down to business.
Christopher, that's a great question. And I think it's actually a phrase where I say, no one allows me to be, I'm not a doormat to anybody, right? You can't use me as a doormat. And I've always had that, even through these victim situations. I've always said, I'm not a doormat. Nobody will treat me like a doormat, except for those I allow to treat me as a doormat. And that right there is what I have had to learn the hard way. What boundaries are, what boundaries look like, boundaries that come with consequences. When is the time to walk away because things aren't changing? And those are really hard boundaries to learn. And I know we're wrapping up on time, but I wanted to make sure to really express here that a big part of my redemption story or just story to share now is the husband that I'm related to, or the man that I married. Now we're celebrating 9 years this year. We have 2 additional kids together, and it's amazing. It's incredible what can happen when you have 2 people who share values and are open and honest with each other and put the love of God ahead of even each other. It's absolutely life-changing.
It's so cool. This is why we had a sense that your story would be so powerful, and I think I would had no idea even kind of how powerful it is. To your point, we need to pick it up at another point, but your comment, the last kind of jammy jam that you and Christopher had about victim. It's one thing to be victimized, but it's your choice as to who you allow to call you a victim or whatever. I think it sets it up powerfully. Doesn't change the difficulty and the tragedy of being put in an unwinnable situation. It sucks. And I think, at least, as you said, there's a time to be a good friend like Job's friends were. They didn't say anything and they just sat with him. They were like, man, this sucks. And I am not going to try to give you advice. Right. But then there is a time to offer a shoulder to cry on and some wisdom around, like, look, you have choice and you have agency in the matter, maybe not in the way that you want and wish for, and which is a little mini parable about, what it's like to be with God. Like, God has great plans for you, but it isn't always in the way and in your timing that you expect. And so I think that same kind of, like, it's not the first and it's not the last time that you will deal with an unwinnable situation. And you need to get good at building this muscle. And let's be grateful for the hard things now to prepare you for the harder things that are to come so that you can be the warrior that you were meant to be. And I think we're so grateful to be on the pirate ship with you on this journey. We were going to do anything that we can to help you out in that regard because it's so important. And we're so excited for the next time we get to jam because we have a lot more to talk about, Shelly.
Thank you. Thank you for the most I want to thank you for is for giving the space for the conversation. I hold that to heart with deep genuineness and for seeing the vastness of the mission. It feels like I am a visionary kind of floating off into space, but I'm not stupid. This is a genuine mission, and I really appreciate the fact that it's validated.
There are a few
we love
things
you,
more
Shelly.
important. Yes,
We love you.
absolutely.
And we deeply, deeply, deeply respect your commitment to our country and to the Lord. And we have a lot of room for you, as we do for all our vets and, of course, our women vets. You know, I'm an investor in a female veteran tech startup, and we love our vets. We love our female vets. You're the reason we're here. As you know, I live 2 blocks from the beach, and there's often a big ship out there on the horizon. I can't tell what it is. I mean, I wonder what that is. Is that a research boat or is that a military? What is that? And here's what I never think. Holy fuck, it's China. And there's only one reason that's true, and that's you and all of your sisters and brothers.
You're here.
So God bless you. And as my dear friend Bill Walton always used to say, thank you for my life.
My pleasure.